I want to welcome my colleague and friend to the stage, Enrique Montiel.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Thank you for coming, all of you, every single one, and all of you listening to the sound of my voice over the airwaves. I try to stay in the present moment as much as possible, and oftentimes it creates short-term memory loss for me. So I want to write down a couple of things on the board that Barbara talked about: LBD and ecology. LBD is living by design. That's right. You and I met when I was pitching that whole idea and the model was just coming to fruition. It was one of those defining moments. I'm sure all of us have had big defining moments in our lives. Those moments that have made us just step back and have to take a deep breath, reorient ourselves. Something else comes to us. We realize a new priority, a new value system, a new way of being. If you haven't been there yet, it's coming. You know, and they're really beautiful blessings. They're blessings. Diamonds are created from pressure, and it's that pressure in life that really transforms us or allows us the opportunity to transform. And the funny thing about life that I've picked up over the years is that if we don't get the lesson, what happens? It comes back. It comes back in another way, in another form. It stacks on itself. In my mind, I started the whole concept of taking pain and not abandoning it and not trying to say it didn't exist, blah, 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 but actually directing it and funneling it and transmuting it, as Napoleon Hill talked about that, transmutation and Think and Grow Rich, which is an amazing book if you haven't read it. Pain into gain. Can you all relate to that? I think this is the essence of why we were put here on earth, is to grow from the pain in our lives. Because if you notice, change is automatic, it happens, but progress is a choice. Okay? Progress is a choice. Everything's changing, everything's growing. That brings us to something else. And when we talk about the model, if you don't know what's going on up here, this is Henry Cejudo. Do you recognize that picture? Do you recognize that young man? He was an American that just won Olympic gold medal in wrestling. The only American that won a gold medal for the U.S. at this Olympics, okay?
In 55-kilogram freestyle wrestling, the story had a familiar ending. American wins gold, but the ending was the only thing that was familiar. Henry Cejudo hasn't spent years working his way through international competition, nor is he the product of Division I college wrestling. He's the 21-year-old son of an undocumented Mexican woman. He is most decidedly an underdog.
That's me with him the night before he left to Beijing. He knocked on my door about 7 hours before he jumped on the plane, and I'm known in some circles as a go-to guy to help people get out of their own way, actualize peak performance, and actually a giant leap in human development has transpired since this night with him after watching his performance and what we did with him. Here's the thing that I just want to share, because there are things that I noticed. Number one, he's 21 years old. That's really young. For the sport of wrestling in America, usually you've got someone who's about 30 years old. Also, they've gone through college, and they've wrestled at a big school typically. I don't know. I can't even think who, if I've ever heard of an Olympic champion, and if there's anybody in the room who was high school and no college and accomplished what that was about. He had been touted as having all the abilities to do that, but there were more seasoned veterans on the team. There are people that were better than him, that had been around longer, had much more experience than him, but they all tanked. I believe it wasn't because they didn't have the ability to, it was because they had the mental block because of the way the American training system is. A lot of what this Champion by Design stuff is really modeled from more of the European, the Eastern principles of how they did psychological work, which is why they dominate, because it's an attitude more than anything else. And I can say this because the Americans train harder than anybody else in the world. They train themselves so hard that they injure themselves more than anybody else in the world. They overtrain, but they don't get the gain. So where's the gain? The gain has to be here because it's all 99% mental. And that's the promise of human potential. The reason it's important for me to bring wrestling into the picture is because it's known as the most toughest sport in the world. Every culture in the world practices it, and it's the perfect metaphor for life and how we experience life, in the sense of we have an opponent, which is our environment, and how we master ourselves and take 100% responsibility for our lives determines how we influence our environment. We never, take control over somebody and just invoke our will. It's more of a dance. It's a dance, like a dance with life, and it's got a limited amount of time. It's got our rules. You've got your police that's involved. It's the whole little, in 6 minutes or less, you're living your life dream. And it's a pretty neat thing. Pain through the gain. Living by design came after living alchemy. Okay? Living by design, let me tell you how that came in, because Champion by Design is a product of LBD. And I'm going really quickly with this because I only have an hour, and I want to just disclose this. I've been working towards this for 13 years. I can validate every single part of what I'm sharing with you with books, with references, with recordings, with whatnot. And the goal is that they always told me if you could package personal development or peak performance in a bottle, you'd be a billionaire. That's what they would tell me. This is as close as I've ever seen it at that point. And we're going to do a demo. We're going to do a demo and show you some validation to just back that statement up. And I can leave it with you, but the goal of this is not to get you to go through a metamorphosis, although you might because of the way I'm structuring this. It's to just say, wow, there's a way to consistently tap the genius inside of us. And I want to share it with the world. I want to share it with everybody. I want to share it in the light of Gandhi, in the light of Mother Teresa, of Nelson Mandela. We're at an age right now, the first age in human history, where I can talk like this, and I don't have to worry so much that I'm going to get shot outside like they did Dr. King, right? Like they did Gandhi. This is the proof that we can have this conversation just about anywhere to push the human race forward and ask the questions that haven't been allowed to be asked. And we can do it right now. You can do it. I'm doing it. I was doing it at a time where, I'd gotten into fistfights on airplanes just because I'd pull out a workbook and told people that I was teaching personal empowerment when I was a kid. It's just ridiculous. The world, living by design is a matrix of the 12 consistent components that show up every single time somebody achieves an outcome. Now, I had to measure this in a way. I had to create this model in a certain way. You see some of my family pictures there. Let me get rid of that. The way this worked, the hypothesis for living by design, or the attention for living by design, was what shows up consistently. I had heard from Unlimited Power that success leaves trails, and if you follow those trails, you'll produce similar results, similar levels of success. Why is that important? Because if I have my attention on something, I can learn that. I can become it. There's ways to accelerate that. There's ways to slow it down. But there's an optimal way to get there in what I call ITEE, maximum impact, the shortest period of time, the least amount of effort, and the greatest enjoyment possible. The greatest fun, right? Groovy people having a groovy time doing groovy things. It's real simple. That's what we were doing last night and have been doing all weekend, is just have groovy people getting together having a groovy time. I'm a real simple guy. I try to be smart, but I'm just it's coming from my belly here. So I asked this question, well, who are the most successful people on the planet right now that I can think of? And this is where it goes into the whole personal growth field, and it gets kind of culty in a way. Come and buy my seminar and go to my... But I said Walt Disney, Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ, all right, Mother Teresa, what do I have in common? I went as far as to say, well, what about Hitler? How does this model apply to Adolf Hitler? And what I found is that I found 12 consistent ingredients that I identified. And if you look hard enough, you'll probably find more. If you look a little less, you'll find less. But these were consistent traits that showed up in every single account. The difference was whether it was encompassing and bringing the world in or segregating out. But the point was it produced the result. It produced the Third Reich. It produced what is now Christianity. It produced Walt Disney World. William Palmer, now I can look back and say William Palmer that founded, or Zebulon Pike for Pike's Peak, and William Palmer here in this area, they all invoke the same darn thing. Are you curious? All right. Real basic. There's